Today we are covering designing Microsoft Azure infrastructure solutions. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. Question is, what should you include in the identity management strategy to support the planned changes? Option A. Deploy domain controllers for corp.fabricam.com to virtual networks in Azure. Option B. Move all the domain controllers from the corp.fabricam.com to virtual networks in Azure. Option C. Deploy a new Azure AD tenant for the authentication of new R&D projects. Option D. Deploy a domain controller for the rd.fabricam.com forest to virtual networks in Azure. Correct answer is option A. Next question is, you need to recommend a strategy for migrating the database content of Wave App 1 to Azure. What should you include in the recommendation? Option A. Use Azure Site Recovery to replicate the SQL servers to Azure. Option B. Use SQL Server Transactional Replication. Option C. Copy the BAC/PAC file that contains the Azure SQL database file to Azure Blob Storage. Option D. Copy the VSD that contains the Azure SQL database files to Azure Blob Storage. Correct answer is option D. Next question is, you need to recommend a strategy for the wave tier of Wave App 1. The solution must minimize. What should you recommend? Option A. Create a runbook that resizes virtual machines automatically to a smaller size outside of business hours. Option B. Configure the scale-up settings for a Wave app. Option C. Deploy a virtual machine scale set that scales out on a 75% CPU threshold. Option D. Configure the scale out settings for a Wave app. Correct answer is option A. Next question is, you need to recommend a data storage strategy for Wave App 1. What should you include in the recommendation? Option A. An Azure SQL Database Elastic Pool. Option B. A vCore based Azure SQL database. Option C. An Azure virtual machine that runs SQL Server. Option D. A fixed size DTU Azure SQL database. Correct answer is option B. Next question is, you need to recommend a notification solution for the IT support distribution group. What should you include in the recommendation? Option A. Azure Network Watcher. Option B. An action group. Option C. A SendGrid account with advanced reporting. Option D. Azure AD Connect Health. Correct answer is option D. Next question is, you design a solution for the wave tier of Wave App 1 as shown in the exhibit. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. First statement, the design supports the technical requirements for redundancy. Options are yes or no. We will see the answers further. Second statement is the design supports auto scaling. Options are yes or no. Third statement is the design requires a manual configuration if an Azure region fails. Options are yes or no. Now we will see the answers. Correct answer for the first statement is yes. Correct answer for the second statement is yes. Correct answer for the third statement is no. Next question is, to meet the authentication requirements of Fabricam, what should you include in the solution? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. This is the answer area. And this is the correct answer. Next question is, you are evaluating the components of the migration to Azure that require you to provision an Azure storage account. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. First statement is, you must provision to Azure storage account for the SQL Server database migration. Options are yes or no. Second statement is, you must provision an Azure storage account for the website content storage. Options are yes or no. Third statement is, you must provision an Azure storage account for the database metric monitoring. Options are yes or no. Correct answer for the first statement is yes. Correct answer for the second statement is no. Correct answer for the third statement is yes.